Please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Market slides in last hour of trade. Sensex sheds nearly 300. Nifty ends below 10,700. Heavyweights, HDFC, Reliance, ITC and Infosys drag. The pharma sector outperforms.
And the Bajaj twins see a good run. Bajaj Finance surges over 7% after a strong showing in the fourth quarter. Bajaj Finserv rises nearly around 5%. Other NBFCs also make a comeback to the green at the end of trade.
After falling 6% from highs, the Midcap index ends with minor gains today. ADAG group companies and power stocks lead the charge.
And Tata Steel and JSW Steel see profit booking after a two-week rally. This despite both companies beating expectations with their fourth quarter earnings.
And in stocks and news, Escorts meets expectations in the fourth quarter, but the stock sees minor profit booking. SpiceJet, TVS and PTC are other laggards in trade. Well, those were the top 5 headlines from the day's trading action, and it was a dreary one with the markets in the grip of the bears. Hello and welcome to Markets Today Talk Back, the show where we tell you about all the details of 8 hours of trading in just 5 headlines. I'm Lata Venkatesh, with me my colleague Nigel D'Souza. Hi, Nigel.
Hi, Lata. Well, over the next 30 minutes, we will discuss the top 5 market headlines and our experts will answer all your stock queries. Joining us now to answer all your stock queries are market expert Ambrish Paliga and technical expert Mitesh Thakkar. Thanks so much, gentlemen, for joining in on the show. But before we come to you, let's take a quick check on how the markets did today. Lata.
Well, first up, we were not starting with very good global cues. Asian markets also were somber, and that's because the US 10-year yield had touched 3.10, in fact, 3.11 at a point in time. Now, as those yields rise, the fear is that the dollar gets strong, and this combination normally leads to outflows from emerging markets. That's the expected pattern. We were belaboring under a second big negative, which is crude. We are a much larger crude importing country than several other Asian countries, and that price closing in on $80 led to another whammy, because that will mean higher inflation, it could mean higher fiscal deficit, higher yields. It deteriorates our macros in several ways. Now, there were factors outside this as well in terms of a loan waiver announced by Karnataka. It was long expected, but it generally, makes the market uncomfortable that the political election season ahead can bring more discomfort to listed stocks. But separately, one saw profit taking in metals, not because of any bad news, as you are going to explain to us later on, but more because they had run up so hard. So all these were pulling down stocks. But there were one or two areas where you could see a little bit of positivity, and one was in the NBFCs, especially after Bajaj Finance numbers came in. It's extraordinary performance under adverse circumstances, in the sense where yields are rising. That showed that good companies survive bad macros. And that's why a lot of good NBFCs recovered in its trail. And secondly, public sector banks, the much beaten down, much maligned sector, after the meeting with Piyush Goyal, recovered on hopes that maybe some more capital will come, something will be afoot. But that was the broad sectoral trend. You tell us, stock specific, what you noticed.
Well, Lata, you were talking about Bajaj Finance, even Bajaj Finserv. It holds 55% stake in Bajaj Finance, and that stock really took off. It was up nearly around 5% by the time we wound up. We had Maharashtra Scooter, and otherwise not very liquid. Today there was liquidity out there. It has nearly 3% stake in Bajaj Finance, and that's more than its market cap. So that as well did play along. The metal stocks, yesterday was a big metal day. Today all of them came in for profit booking. Hindalco, Tata Steel and JSW Steel. The numbers, even for Hindalco, didn't look that bad. The other two were a beat actually, but they did come in for some profit booking, and that's an interesting chart. Just on May 3rd, all these stocks, in fact, from May 3rd to May 15th, they rallied more than 10 to around 12%. So that explains the profit booking that we saw in today's trading session. Broader markets, Escorts did well. Some profit booking, though, by the time we wound up, it ended with a cut of around 0.5%. But if you don't give a good set of numbers, you're not being spared. JSFC, that stocks did see selling. Gujarat Pipavav, skipper from the broader markets, hard knock that we saw. The advanced decline ratio, well, it was 1:1. But if you take a look at some of those gainers, not the best in pedigree, the likes of HCC did see a bit of a bounce in trade today, Reliance Communication, Reliance Naval, even HDIL, all those stocks were doing well. And Lata, just to wind up, if you take a look at the Nifty, in the last couple of trading sessions, we have corrected 250 points. The Nifty Bank has corrected 900 points just from the recent peak that we saw on the Tuesday highs.
And the strange part is a lot of the correction has come from the blue-chipped private sector banks. So clearly someone is booking profit out there. But before we come to all those details with our guests, first the macro question to Mitesh. Mitesh, what's the deal on the Nifty and the Nifty Bank now? Are the trades different or are both headed lower with different intensity?
I think we've been calling for some choppy correction, and but more of a profit booking led kind of decline, not a big downside or a downward kind of a trend. I think we've had a good run on both the indices. I think a pullback to the short to medium term averages is playing out. For the Bank Nifty, the levels are close to about 25,800, which is about 300 points away from here. For the Nifty, I think the first support is around 10,630, roughly about 50 points away from here. So as long as those levels are not being violated on closing basis, what can possibly play out is that we've had a high on the day of election results. I think that high and these levels which I mentioned, I think could be the range where the markets could trade for some time. After a good rally, I think we are possibly looking at some kind of consolidation. So some profit booking at higher levels will keep on happening, but broadly, in case the lower level support levels are being held, then I think we'll be in a good spot. And I think after about 2 weeks of consolidation, we can again start moving up.
Okay, all right, Mitesh, thanks so much for that. Let's get straight to our second headline then of the day. The NBFCs, they made a comeback today. Cholamandalam, Mahindra & Mahindra Finance, Shriram Transport Finance, all of them ended the day in the green. All this thanks to the big run that we saw on the Bajaj twins. They had a good run today. Bajaj Finserv was up more than 4%. Meanwhile, Bajaj Finance rose by more than 7% on the back of a strong showing in the fourth quarter. We're now joined by Abhishek Kothari to decode those earnings. Abhishek, wasn't it a stellar show?
Well, the king of consumer finance has reported a stellar quarter. So Bajaj Finance AUM, that is the assets under management, grew by 40% YOY and about 8% on a sequential basis. So what drove the loan book? Now, the loan book was largely driven by consumer finance, commercial finance, rural finance. Now, the housing portfolio also more than doubled in the previous quarter. If you look at the housing portfolio, it has come in at 3,590 crore. That compares to about 1,590 crore in the previous quarter. The asset quality improved. That was the key heartening factor, that despite the fact they transited to 90 days past due of recognition, the gross NPA came in at 1.48%. That compares to about 1.7%. And even the provision coverage ratio improved to 75% versus 68%. So overall, the balance sheet strengthened, loan growth remains strong, and the net profit at 720 crore was higher than our poll of 640 crores. Back to you.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Abhishek. Well, let's get to, let's invite Ambarish Baliga to speak about NBFCs. Ambarish, what did you make of the Bajaj Finance numbers? And the market has gotten scared of NBFC companies because of the rise in yields.
Right.
But would you separate what would you like and what would you not like?
No, clearly, I mean, like even among NBFCs, I mean, you have a clear distinction, just like the way you have between private banks. I mean, when you compare a Kotak HDFC versus Axis and ICICI Bank. So similarly, when you compare the NBFCs, clearly you have the Bajaj Finance, Bajaj Finserv actually falling in that blue chip lot. And clearly, the market clearly has major expectations from them. Like, for example, I mean, from Bajaj Finserv, I think, I mean, we should see about 20%, 21% growth on the top line, and clearly expecting the net profit to actually go up by close to about 42%.
Okay. Well, let's get to the third headline. In that case, Ambarish, after falling 6% from the highs, Midcaps ended in the green, thanks to ADAG stocks, power stocks, and a bunch of other mid-cap companies. Relcom, Reliance Communication, was the one that stood out, had a huge relief rally after Ericsson, its operating supplier, came out and clarified, according to sources, that they won't take the company to the NCLT. Separately, Reliance Power and Adani Power also rose, while other ADAG stocks like Reliance Capital and Reliance Infra ended over 4% in the green. Well, let me just tell you a little bit about why Relcom had this 56% rally. One was this Ericsson news. Why is it so important? Ericsson has been rendering some service to Relcom, and under the NCLT, it's the financial, or even in the resolution plan, which the banks were having outside the NCLT with Relcom, the banks were to get the first money which RelGeo would pay when they took over some of the assets of Arcom. Now, obviously, Ericsson was upset that they had their employees in Arcom factory, and they were not getting paid. So they took Arcom to NCLT. But I think there has been an understanding between banks, Arcom, and Ericsson, because if the company is taken to NCLT, then it's possible that RelGeo cannot apply to buy the assets of Relcom, because they would be seen as related parties. After all, they are brothers. Therefore, it was very important to resolve this case outside the NCLT. This probably was explained to Ericsson, and probably the banks even agreed to pay some money to Ericsson. We don't know the details. All we know is sources told us that Relcom and Ericsson are agreeing to an out-of-court resolution, and Ericsson both have appealed to the NCLT to end the insolvency process. That's good news, because if it went to insolvency, nobody would be able to buy it, and it will go into liquidation, sell for scrap. Now it can be sold as a going concern. So it was very big good news. And of course, the other big part was that after the rally, it went into F&O ban. So that propelled the rally even further.
Absolutely, Lata. All right. Let's move on. We have another query that's coming in. Krishna has texted us from Hyderabad. He has around 2,000 shares of Adani Power at a price of around 47 rupees and 35 paise. He has been holding it for the last 4 months. Should he hold on or should he sell? All right, let's go across to Mitesh for this one. Mitesh, your take on Adani Power?
So I think the stock has had a very similar decline, Nigel, in August 15 when the lows were around 19.5. So maybe, when you hit an important earlier low, I think you get some kind of a bounce back. So my idea would be to possibly hold with a stop below 19. On a bounce back, maybe closer to about 30, 31 is where I think that will be a good exit. And this all things might take about 4 to 5 months from here.
Okay. You have a call on Adani Power, Ambarish?
Yeah, I mean, clearly the overall power sector has been underperforming, and this is one of the worst stocks in the power sector. And I mean, rightly it's been declining, I mean, for the last 15, 18 months. And I'll not really be surprised if we still see a further decline to levels of about 18 or 16. So, I mean, my suggestion would be, like...
Book your loss.
Not really book your loss right now, but then since most of the mid-cap and small caps have just started moving up, Adani also can bounce back, like what Mitesh said. And in case we see levels of about 25, 26, I think you should utilize that to book out.
Okay, just reduce your losses, perhaps.
Let's get straight then to our fourth headline. Tata Steel and JSW Steel, both of them ended the day in the red after a good rally that we've seen in the last 2 weeks. This comes despite both the companies posting a good set of numbers. We caught up with the management of both companies. Let's listen in to what they had to tell us with regard to steel prices going ahead.
If you look at 16,000 rupees, I think you can go a bit above that, go a bit below that, but
you should be able to sustain.
Yeah, I think
thereabout.
that is what we want to aim for, unless something very dramatic happens. But I look at steel prices today in dollar terms as being closer to long-term normals. It's not something which is unusual. In rupee terms, it looks high because the rupee has moved from 45 to 65 in the last 4 or 5 years. But are they $600 for hot rolled coil is not an unusual price. So I believe the prices are sustainable internationally.
They are.
Yeah. So we should be aiming for this.
The robustness in the steel demand globally, and also the discipline the Chinese are today exercising in moderating their exports.
Okay.
It is expected that the steel prices are range bound in future.
Okay.
Even in India, we are seeing a similar trend because there is a very good demand that is picking up. The momentum is very strong, growth momentum. So considering that, we feel the steel prices more or less will remain at the current levels. If not, they go up.
Okay. Well, so that's very positive vibes coming in from both the JSW Steel and the Tata Steel managements. So we have questions now. Tarun Gupta has messaged us a question about Tata Steel. He has 50 shares, which he has purchased at 400 rupees. He's been holding it for a year and a half. Bought at a great price. He's a long-term investor. He says, should he hold or should he sell? Well, this question to actually both of you, but first, Ambarish.
Yeah, in fact, I've been maintaining for the last few months that the steel upcycle, which we saw starting from 2015, is more or less done. I mean, although we could see the steel prices sustaining, but you'll surely have the operational cost starting to move up, which we have seen as far as the India business of Tata Steel is concerned. So I really don't see Tata Steel going back to those 700 plus levels. So I would suggest that he should, at least book out at these levels.
Mitesh?
All right, Mitesh, what about you? What's your take on the ferrous space?
Yeah. So to me, I think my sense is that I think the stock has kind of made a peak at about 750 odd levels, but has also corrected from there. So maybe I think we are already witnessing some kind of a medium-term reversal. I think we will retrace this decline a bit. I think 650, 675 would be a slightly better zone to exit, but I think I would be okay, if he exits around those levels.
Okay. All right, so you could good to hold for a bit more is what Mitesh is saying. But both of them agree that the peak of 750 may not be attained. But Mitesh says time your exit better. You may get a little more money if you waited a little. That's the advice. And with that, the fifth and the last headline from the markets today, stocks and news. SpiceJet stock fell by almost 4%, courtesy the rising crude prices. TVS Motors and PTC were on the back foot. TVS fell more than 3% because of fourth quarter numbers, especially margins not coming up to expectations, while PTC was down by 9% as the company said it had to make some extraordinary provisions for written down plants. On the other hand, Escort as well ended in the red, but that was despite posting good fourth quarter numbers. Since it's good news, let's get to Sonia Shanoy, who will analyze the numbers for us. Sonia.
Well, Escorts has reported a very strong set of numbers this quarter. In fact, across the businesses, the tractors, the construction equipment, as well as the railway business has done very well for Escorts. The tractor business has seen stupendous margin growth. Almost a 500 basis points margin jump is what we've seen in the tractor business. But not just that, construction business and railway business has gone up. In fact, the order wins, the order book for the railway business stands at more than 300 crores for the full year. And the management is very optimistic. They say in the first quarter of FY19, the industry itself will grow about 15 to 18 odd %. Demand growth continues to be very strong.
Okay, all right. Thanks so much for that, Sonia. Well, we got another query that's coming in there from Rajiv Ranjan. He messaged us a query about Escorts. He has 100 shares at around 540 rupees, holding it for the last 6 months. Should he hold on or should he sell? Amrish, coming across to you for Escorts. The stock, once it got going, it really took off.
Right.
What would your advice be?
I mean, superb numbers. It has given, I think, a 50-60% sort of a return in the last 1 year. And look at the margins. The margin expansion about 450 or 480 to 500 basis points in each of their segments. So clearly, this is a performer, will continue at least in the foreseeable 3 to 4 quarters, if not more. So although it's given 50% sort of returns in the last 1 year, I expect at least about 20 or 30% returns this year. So I think you should just stay put.
Okay. Good to hear that people will make more money if they stay put. Mitesh, your thoughts on Escorts?
Yeah, very similar, Lata. I think, this is a stock which has not yet given up making higher highs and higher lows. While it is overbought, there could be pullbacks and corrective declines. I think as long as the stock is not breaking below levels of roughly around 870, 860 support, I think you should hold on. So maybe you can trail the stop loss there. But I do believe that the stock has potential to get to 1050, 1100 soon.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us with your advice to our viewers. Well, with that, we wrap up this edition of Markets Today. Talk back. It's been a day where the markets have lost a lot of steam, but even in a market that's losing steam, experts are there to help you pick some winners. Stay with us. We will be back tomorrow morning with the markets bright and early.